Howdy, howdy, folks, and welcome back to the PI Guy channel. Today we will take a deep dive into the mysterious places people may try to hide their assets. Now, as a professional private investigator, you may be looking for a subject's assets in relation to a divorce case or even a child custody case. It could be a criminal matter or even a fraud case relative to a business. No matter the investigation, there are a lot of places a person may try to hide their assets, and finding them is not always easy, but we will go through some methodologies in identifying those hidden assets as well. Let me first say, if anyone is thinking of hiding assets with the intent to defraud anyone or hide them from people that may have a legal claim to them, such as a spouse, a business partner, or even a debt or judgment collections, you may be breaking some laws in doing this. For instance, in regard to divorce situations, some states are what are known as common property states, and some are known as equitable distribution states. In a community property state, they will usually view all assets of a marriage as a 50-50 split, which include all assets acquired by either spouse during the course of their marriage. Many times, money, cash, or other financial assets either party had prior to the marriage may not be included as community property unless those funds were commingled with marital assets. In an equitable distribution state, the court tries to split everything in an equitable or fairly balanced basis. This equitable splitting is determined by the particular circumstances of the marriage. In other words, each party is entitled to a share or portion of all assets, but not necessarily 50%. Generally speaking, the court will look at each party's contribution, both financial and as a couple, along with the length of marriage and other varying factors. So who gets what in the case is really dependent on the state laws and rules as well as what the court determines in the matter. Now, just because one party to any case decides to hide assets, it does not mean that those hidden assets cannot be discovered through a proper investigation. We will discuss some methods to determine if there could be hidden assets in just a moment. Let's take a close look at some common ways people may try to hide assets in today's ever-changing world. The first way is simply cash. That is right. As they say, cash is king, and many people think, keyword think, they can just keep all their cash assets in cash and no one can find out. That thinking is flawed in many ways, and here is why. Any respectable investigation is going to ask for, nice word for subpoena, all banking records for a subject at their known banks, to include deposits, expenditures, and checks, money orders, or other financial documents cashed by that individual. Yes, if your subject has a bank account and they take their paycheck to that bank and they cash it, there is most likely a record of them cashing that check, even if none of it was deposited. And if it was cashed or deposited somewhere else, and there was a cash deposit into the known account, that is a huge flag that there are probably hidden cash assets somewhere. I would always recommend to use the services of a certified accounting expert, fraud or financial investigator, or someone who can act as an expert witness to review these subpoenaed documents carefully. So if there are cash deposits, how do you track the source of those down? I mean, where did the cash come from? Well, the possible answers to those questions are plentiful and will require further investigation. The subject may have used a check cashing service or could have a bank account at a different bank where they deposit their checks, then get cash out to pay bills and deposit only the amount they need in the known bank account. They could also be working for cash pay, which is a common practice for many people going through a divorce. But even if they are getting paid cash, be it under the table or over the table, legit or not, there is probably a paper trail to be found. I would usually recommend some surveillance be conducted for these types of situations. The surveillance would be in the early hours or whenever the subject may be going to work to help identify a possible employer. Once that possible employer is located, then you simply request through the subpoena process any and all records related to that employee and information regarding where paychecks are deposited or cashed, as well any amounts of cash pay that have been made along with the dates. Now keep in mind, we are private investigators, not law enforcement. We do not have subpoena power ourselves, but our investigation can recommend for the attorney to subpoena those records. This may and most likely would lead to further subpoenas for records at other banks, cash checking establishments, or where the subject may be cashing the paychecks. Another common place for people to try to hide cash assets is in physical assets. That's right. They may take cash out and buy things such as vehicles, jewelry, collectibles, and even real estate. Now, as for vehicles and real estate, those generally are easy to find through normal investigative matters for most PIs. Running a comp report in your favorite PI database will probably find them if the subject just put them in their name. But that seems to be very apparent to most people that it would be easy to track down, so they would use some other means of hiding them. I would again start my investigation with a subpoena request for all account activity at all known financial institutions the subject has utilized. Having that financial expert we discussed earlier review those transactions, we would be looking for large cash withdrawals, checks made out to themselves or a relative or a friend, or other transactions that would throw up a red flag and identify when and how much was potentially turned into a hidden asset. In most cases, it will be turned into cash, then a purchase made with that cash. It would be fairly easy to identify what they purchased and from who if they wrote a check or used a credit or a debit card. Given that limited information, you now have a value range of what type of asset they may have acquired in a time frame in which they did it, or they could be hanging on to the cash, hiding it in a pillowcase under their bed. Again, I would recommend to my client to conduct surveillance and see if the subject leads us to their new Maserati or that dream condo, or if they start sporting some major bling while out on the town on the weekends. Anytime I recommend surveillance on these types of cases, I usually recommend a trash pickup too. Now, you need to make sure it is done legally, so check with your state and your local laws to ensure you can do this. Doing a trash pickup can identify many things, such as deposit slips for banks, receipts from cash checks, work-related check stubs, receipts for items purchased, extended warranty offers for vehicles or other assets, and who knows what else. But those are relatively easy ways to hide assets for most people, and with some determination and a good investigator, they are sometimes easy to identify. What about something like a trust? I have seen people hide assets inside a trust that is inside a trust that is inside a trust. That is not always as easily identifiable, especially if those trusts were established under other people's names years ago. The fact that trusts were established years ago may be a good indicator of intent to commit fraud at some point, and the subject was just waiting for the opportune time too. But how do you identify those trust funds? This gets a little more challenging, to be sure. Your state should have records that you can search to see if a trust is set up in the subject's name. But that doesn't mean that they used that trust to funnel money through. There could be another trust that is set up in that trust name and they used it, or it could go deeper. This also goes for ghost businesses. I have seen people create businesses that own businesses that own businesses and pass money through the business and trusts to try to hide their tracks. This is obviously going to be a situation where most likely millions, or at least in the high hundreds of thousands of dollars in assets, are being hidden. I again would employ a financial fraud investigator to help me maneuver through this process and document it all as an expert witness. That then brings us to one of the most growing places people try to hide cash assets today, and that is cryptocurrency. For those that are not familiar with what cryptocurrency is, it is a digital or a virtual form of currency that is secured by cryptography, supposedly making it nearly impossible to counterfeit or double spend. The technology behind cryptocurrency is generally the use of decentralized networks based on what is referred to as a blockchain technology using a network of disparate computers. A common type of cryptocurrency that you have probably heard about is Bitcoin. While it is the most popular, there are other ones as well. Many people think that hiding cash in cryptocurrency is not traceable, and many people are completely wrong in this thought process. Again, if your investigation leads you to believe the subject has taken large amounts of cash out of accounts, sold assets, or is receiving cash from unknown sources, they could be hiding it in cryptocurrency. Hiring a computer forensic expert is a way to try to find out information regarding if the subject may be using cryptocurrency if the client has access to computers and other electronic devices. A subpoena for access to those devices can work, as well as subpoena to records from the ISP or Internet Service Provider. If the subject has utilized a cryptocurrency system, there is a high chance the device that they access it through has a fingerprint of that transaction on it. This can be enough to then start a trace of those transactions through a variety of methods, to include subpoenas as well as others that are far above my head. Thus, why I hire a financial and a computer forensic expert when needed in these types of cases. No matter how the assets are hidden, if the resources are available from the client and you have the right resources available as a PI, you can often find those hidden assets. Now, if you would like to know some secrets to locate and contact investigations, then check out this video.